Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Frank Macaluso from Garageaholic, and today we're going to be doing a second video in our two-part video series of the E30 M3 restoration. Today we're going to be working on the headliner. Thank you so much for CATuned for providing the black headliner material. This is a Euro black headliner that we're going to be using. We're going to be getting into a lot of detail on how to install an E30 headliner, particularly for the M3 with a sunroof. However, the E30s, all the E30s share the very same common architecture, which is the two-rod design with the glue around the outside perimeter. We're going to be doing all that today, and we're going to be making it look super fine. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Thanks a lot to Igor for sponsoring this channel and sponsoring this video for the M3 headliner. Take a look in the link down in the description, and please take a look at the video that we're going to be working on today for how to install and use that as a base for installing your own CATuned black headliner into your E30 as an upgrade. Thanks a lot, guys. Now the headliner, as you saw in previous videos, be redone for sure, and we got to make sure that we get like a good one. And of course, the sunroof piece as well is going to get redone. Was very old and very used and could not be reused. As you can see, it was kind of falling apart. And I did take some really good notes on that. But this is actually going to be a challenge for me. Okay, working on anything upside down is going to be a challenge for anybody. But for me, I'm actually going to be acquiring CATuned. This is their German cloth. They have two different versions. They have a German cloth and then they have a Euro cloth. So this here is the Euro cloth and this here is the German cloth. The CATuned offers two different versions here. And this German cloth has a stitching that's much, much finer than the Euro cloth. The Euro cloth is a little bit more coarse. And you can kind of see that coarseness in the stitching itself, and here it's much finer. That's the kind that we got here. We got the finer German cloth version, but both still offer the same amount of give. They're pretty cool, pretty comfortable, and they both have a slight foam backing, which will be really nice for making it look and feel comfortable and factory. This is the old headliner with its old sunroof cage, and of course, I kept the location of all of the bars. And you can see that on the new version, they have preserved the bar location, and you can put the bars inside of these loops, which is very, very convenient. It takes a lot of the thinking out. That's what this is intended to do. As you can see, there's a sunroof hole location there, no sunroof there. And what we're going to be doing is basically raising it into the car with the hangers first, and that's going to basically set it in place. And then from there, you're going to start stretching it, and you're going to be peeling it over onto these locations and gluing it into these, right? There's another one here for the door as well. And it's all going to get glued in there. And then, of course, on the back side, because the M3 rear is a larger C-pillar than the regular BMW E30, there is this extra piece here for the, the third brake light mount and everything like that, and that's where the headliner gets glued in on here. So there's a lot that needs to happen here, but we need to start off with the basics. And what I did was I actually glued in the original, as you can see, the original foam here is glued back in, and I had it clamped overnight, and it should be in good shape now, so we'll be removing that very shortly. And I know that I'm explaining a lot here, but I want to be detailed in this explanation. Okay, first, what you really need here to do this job right are at least 12 of the 1-inch Harbor Freight grab handles. These things are spring-loaded clamps, and they are what's going to be holding your headliner in place nice and uniform so that you don't have to hold it the entire time. Then you're going to need some scissors. These are not just any scissors. These are WIS scissors. They're titanium-coated W7Ts. Description down below and how to get them. These are really, really nice, good, high-quality industrial shears that are going to cut this very reliably without you having to go 25 times to make sure you're cutting the material correctly. We got some masking tape. We have tons of good, clean razor blades. You want to have good, clean razor blades. There's a lot of these that are brand new. And if you have to go through them every pass you go just to make sure that you have a nice, clean blade every time you're cutting, that's worth it because you want to make sure that you have a good, clean cut and that you're not sawing through it like a Sawzall. You just want to get it cut and get it done right. The next thing that you want is the contact adhesive. This is really the core of what makes this a really good job. This is the 90 strength contact adhesive. This was referred to me by Igor at CATuned. Now this is really, really good stuff as opposed to the other stuff that you can get. I would have used the headliner adhesive, which is not a 90 strength. I don't know what the strength of this is, but it definitely takes a lot longer to set and cure. This is very, very easy. All you gotta do is spray a couple coats on both of the contact surfaces. You gotta wait about 5 minutes, and then once it's tacky, when you put your finger on it and you don't see the glue coming off onto your finger, it's ready to go. And when you put that headliner material onto the chassis, it is going to stay. And then associated with the clamps as well are these basically just paint stirrers. And these things actually help to distribute the weight, distribute the force rather, when you clamp down onto a surface, is to prevent a dimple from forming onto the foam-backed headliner material. So this is really good to help distribute that force. So basically that's all that you need, guys, in order to get started here with this. And now let's go right into the fabric. So what I have in my lap is the sunroof panel piece. We're gonna do that later. We're gonna start off with the major roof headliner piece. You can see the old one is right there, and this is the new one here. This is a very quality German cloth provided by CATuned, and thank you so much to Igor for giving me a couple of hints on how to do this the right way, and I'll show you step by step in as detailed of a way that I can to show you exactly how to install this in your E30. M3 is a little different, but generally it's going to be all the same. So let's get right on into it. Then let's start with getting the rods in, getting them placed in the car, and start hitting it up. As you can see, I have it upside down, resting on my table. And the idea here is that this is the rear. This is toward the rear windscreen, and this is the front. And you can see the front is going to have the sunroof hole cut, but that's going to be for later. First, let's talk about the rods. So these are the two different types of rods. This one starts from the rear forward. This is the first type of rod. And it's different because it has a piece that comes off and it slides right on, and it allows for easier installation. And this rod, when you slide it through this hoop here, this loop rather, you put it into each of the side walls of the roof and you twist it up and it snaps into place as if to hold the headliner firmly against the foam pad on the roof. This one here, more towards the center of the roof, toward the sunroof, this one's a different type of loop, and this one also goes through the loop inside of the headliner, but this one actually faces down, okay? And this one actually gets clipped in with two little clips like this on the underside of the roof, and they're part of the roof structure, and you'll see it kind of clips on in. And the idea with this is that when you slide this through and you figure out exactly where those clips are going to be, you want to take a little slit and cut a little slit inside the headliner material as to prevent there from being a tiny little dimple where those little hooks are. So what we want to do is we want to slip these guys through, we want to fit it in, and we want to get this thing at least set up, and I'll show you exactly what we're talking about. So now the idea with this guy in the rear is that you got each of your guys kind of hooked up in there. That one's hooked up in that, and this one here is also hooked up into that. And you really wanted to get the rod sitting inside of this little groove here. You can see that little groove. It needs to sit inside that. And the only way to really do that effectively is to twist it right in. So let me see if I can try twisting it, and it should snap into place. I mean, it's just a steel rod, so there's a lot of give there, right? So that guy's in, and I think that's it. I think it's in. Right? I think that's it. I mean, there's going to be a little bit of adjustment. Definitely have to adjust it, right? There we go, something like that. Pull it down, kind of gets it a little bit more uniform. Pull it from the other side as well, and then we got to work the fabric. All right, so now from this view, you can see these two guys here. Those slits that I were talking about are essentially right here. So what you want to do is you want to essentially just kind of cut the headliner material, and it'll allow this to kind of slip inside. Just get the metal part of the loop of the hoop back into that, right? And you leave the rest of that alone. And then you just kind of push the metal back up against the foam, and you should be in good shape. And you can see here how much extra material he provides. I mean, this is something that's going to end up getting stretched over, and it's going to get folded underneath into that, and then that's going to end up creating that really nice pulled look of the stretched fabric. So now that we've got this essentially installed, both of the hoops, the rods installed, now we want to take that and kind of fold it up underneath and get that last hoop in right over here. And that's going to help stretch the fabric a little bit more. But that's also going to end up allowing us to see exactly where we need to trim our sunroof in order to get the sunroof part folded over and glued right on in. Because you have to remember that, yes, this is being held in by the 3 rods, but it's also being held in by the glue that's surrounding the entire perimeter of the sunroof and the quarter windows and the driver window, the driver door sills as well, and of course the rear piece. So we're going to do all that in the next couple minutes. As you can see with my cutting, I was very, very conservative, and actually this is pretty good. You want to leave about 1.5 inches of gap in between, and that way you can take this and curve it around and get it right onto this lip here and on this back lip here, at which point you're going to end up taking the sunroof panels, the sunroof brackets, and kind of clamping them down on there to further hold it. Okay, so now we're working on the sunroof, and what I'm starting to do is essentially mock it up with these 1-inch clamps that I got from Harbor Freight, and I'm just kind of like stretching the fabric just enough to know how it's going to feel on the underside here, to know that it's stretched just enough but not too much where it starts to affect the corners, which are very, very important for a sunroof. So I think I've got it stretched just enough to know how much I should stretch it when I do the final setup, which is going to include using these are basically paint stirrers. And the idea is that you put them on the underside here, and you use the clamps to evenly distribute the force from the clamp so it doesn't leave a dimple everywhere that it's being laid out. So now that I kind of know what it's going to look like, I can start stretching, I can spray, let it set for a couple of minutes before it gets tacky. Then I can start taking the fabric and stretching it over the area that it's glued, let it set there, and then I put my paint stirrers underneath and start clamping all the way around, making sure that the corners have been stretched, because this is a very stretchy fabric. So the corners are really where you want to stretch your fabric to make sure that you're not getting any types of kinks or fold overs. So the sunroof panel is just about done, and I gotta work through these corners a little bit better and stretch them out and work them through, but it's looking pretty good underneath. Now, the fabric needs to stretch in all directions, not just toward the sunroof and not just toward the bar, but it also needs to stretch outward. So as you start stretching this fabric outward as well, toward the quarter windows and through the front doors, you'll notice that everything really starts to come together. And of course, back here, we need to also stretch the fabric over this, which is actually more like over this guy that snaps into place. So there's still a lot that needs to happen, but the sunroof is where everything starts, and then you kind of work your way from there. Now, just remember that this front panel piece is all going to be covered up by this visor. And this visor is going to be, going to be covering up all that stuff, including sunroof motor and everything like that. So I'm not really too concerned about all this, including up in here, because it's all going to be covered. So that's like one of my last concerns at this point in time. My main concern is to make sure that everything around the sunroof is good and will be trimmed, obviously, until we start putting our sunroof bracketry and rails down. That'll cover all this stuff up, and make it look really nice and slick. But for now, let's start working on the quarter windows in the same manner as we did with the sunroof. Okay, so we got both front doors done. It didn't take very long for the glue to really sit in place. The 2 quarters are also done. You can see underneath how things are starting to look. Looks pretty slick. The only thing I really need to work through are these 2 corners, this one here and the other one. But there is room to play on the top side here. Both of these are done on both sides. We still haven't done too much on the front, and that's because we still have a lot more to do up here, so I'm probably just gonna leave a lot of this alone. In fact, this is all gonna get cut out right there, and that's because that's gonna fit the sunroof motor and all the electronics and everything like that. And again, like I said earlier, the visor is gonna cover this entire front half. So I'm really not concerned about any of this stuff at all. The back is something I need to start working on, and that includes this piece here with a 3rd brake light cutout. And the cutouts need to be added before we start doing all this. This is actually gonna really help finish the entire headliner, because this stretching back is going to make the rest of the headliner, as you can see here, look really, really nice and professional. Now, don't forget, when we're done, we still have to put the grab handles on. The grab handles actually serve a purpose, and that is to continually hold that headliner in place, because you're screwing the handles to the roof structure with the headliner sandwiched in between. So that's also going to be holding and pulling a lot of the fabric and getting everything nice and taut in place. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to finish with the rear part of the headliner, and I think I know how I want to do this. What we want to do is first we want to ensure that we install this. And then we're going to be placing a little bit of glue around the outside of this after it's installed, and then we're going to stretch this guy over and install. Once it's installed, we're going to trim the excess, and that excess trim, see if I can show you here, that excess trim is going to end up getting folded up and underneath and glued again on the inside. Gives it a really nice finished look on the outside. And then all we have to do is just cut our slit for the 3rd brake light and install. Now, I think it goes without saying that if you have a regular E30 non-M3, then the 3rd brake light is located on the rear parcel shelf. In that case, guys, we're about 90% done with the headliner installation. All we need to do now is trim all the fabric away and worry about the grab handles. Now, I've already done 2 grab handles on the other side, and on this side, on the driver's side, there's only 1 grab handle. And as you can see, I labeled them with green stickers. Before I finished putting the headliner itself on and glued it to the frame, I marked where those little black plastic blocks were located up in here and in here for the grab handle to go onto. In fact, as you can see here, it matches quite nicely. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna feel around for them, we're gonna feel for the 2 holes on each one of them, and we're gonna start screwing them in with the right hardware. One really good thing to check is before you install the E30 dome light is to make sure that it works properly, that all the connections work and that everything is nice and tuned. And by that I mean the copper parts here need to be cleaned and sanded down just to make sure it's making a good contact with the bulb. And a good test here is to take a 12-volt power supply, put the ground to one end, doesn't matter which end since this is an incandescent bulb, and you put the power to the other end. And when you flip this switch, what you're doing is you're flipping the contacts from one side of the bulb off, and then the other side of the bulb. Off, other contact. So there are two different modes. One contact is on when the door is always on, and the other contact is always on with key on, right? So no matter whether the key is on or off, it'll always keep this light on. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that all the contacts work in all those conditions. So you can see that regardless of where I put the power supply, it works. So this light is ready to get installed. So when you connect this, you got your two positive 12 volts going here. 1, 2, denoted by the plastic covering, and then the ground goes on this side, just like that. And then you put those longer ends in first, squeeze them in. And you can feel by doing this, I probably need to make a little bit more of a cut. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little bit more of a cut, and then I'm going to slide this through and make sure that it clicks into the bracket on the underside. And there she is. There's the grab handles. Light grab handle. And just for fun, before we end this episode, let's see what this front piece looks like, because we have to do a lot of trimming on this. All right, so I'm kind of holding it up here. But you can see how it makes a really nice clean edge on the front corner, and all this stuff in the front is all going to get covered, including this part of the headliner that needs to get cut out and is going to be replaced by, I know it's hard to see, I'm sorry with one hand, by that little flap that's going to end up going over. So the vinyl flap is going to end up covering a lot of that, and of course on the side too, you can see here that that's all going to get covered. Let's trim all of this excess headliner material and then do a finale review of what it looks like. So the third brake light is in and solid. Give that a little clean before we finally install the rear windshield, which by the way, we can do now because this is in. It makes it so much easier to do this without the rear windshield. I'd like to still get the rest of the interior and a lot of the rear parcel shelf installed before we do the rear windshield, but that's for another episode. We trimmed all this out, and obviously, as you guys probably are aware, that the quarter window and the door trim, the weather stripping, is going to be covering all this anyway, so this is all a moot point. But you can see inside how nice and clean it looks all the way up to where the C-pillar will end up being. So it's going to cover this, but it will really nicely complement it. And the rear brake light is in. All of the grab handles are in. As you can see, I also did not finish trimming all the sunroof out, and I'll tell you exactly why. Because we're going to be doing the sunroof in the next episode. We're going to be doing the sunroof panel, the sunroof installation, the cables, and we're also going to be testing it and cycling it up and down, in and out, just to make sure that everything is tuned properly. Guys, thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you've learned something about how to install the E30 headliner. Not easy, not hard, you just need to have patience. That's really what it is. You just need to do it slowly. You need to have the right tools. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching. Take it easy.